And we are rolling. Welcome to Champions of Champions Boxing Talk. Now, this is the fight that I personally picked earlier on to be the best fight style-wise of the year. If these two stylistically match up well at Bramall Lane on the UK, coming up soon in about 10 days' time, I think, though it's hard to actually say that Anthony Joshua and Vladimir Klitschko will be beaten, but for the pure boxing fans, this is the match as far as I'm concerned. Kell Brook v Errol Spence. Why is that the case? Well, we're finally transcending, aren't we, from the Pacquiao-Mayweather era, so to speak. Man is still in there, but, as time ticks on, he comes closer to retirement and working full-time in the Senate office. In the meantime, we've seen the meteoric rise of Keith Thurman. Danny Garcia's there. Sean Porter, who gave Keith Thurman all he could handle. Kell Brook, who Sean Porter gave all he could handle. But there's a new kid on the block who's seen by many to be extremely special, at least potentially. That man is Errol Spence. Now, to compare this matchup, Brook v Spence, to Klitschko and Joshua, you could kind of say that Kell Brook is more of the proven guy in this matchup. 30 years of age. Had a great battle with Sean Porter. Went to war on 2 occasions with Carson Jones in real close battles, shall we say. Then, he takes on the ultimate challenge, doesn't he? Against Gennady Golovkin. He holds his own v Golovkin. But after a gallant effort, he's stopped in the 5th round with damage to his eye, which he has needed surgery to repair. We look at Errol Spence, and maybe so far his level of opposition doesn't match up to Kell Brook's, but take Carson Jones, who I would consider a B+ fighter, not an A-level fighter. You've got Sean Porter, who is definitely, I think, in the top 4 of the welterweight division, so you could give him an A+. Gennady Golovkin is an elite fighter. He's on the pound-for-pound list. I think on most people's opinion, he exists among the top, at least top 6, shall we say. But Errol Spence doesn't have those names. He has Chris Algieri, but here's the thing. Errol Spence is quite a lot younger than Kell Brook. He's only had, I think, 21 fights, is it? Of course you're not going to have those names by now. I actually think Kell Brook should be more accomplished in terms of elite competition and names he should have fought by now. Errol Spence has got time, and already Errol Spence is fighting a big name, isn't he? And Errol Spence is fighting away from his comfort zone, the United States. He's the man. This is why I feel Kell Brook is possibly in trouble in this fight. Errol Spence is the man who is confident enough to get on that flight, come to the UK out of his comfort zone, and attempt to beat the champion. Now, people will say, well, you've got to take chances as a young fighter. Really? Well, that's only half obvious. Did Floyd Mayweather ever come to the UK when he was a young fighter and take on one of the champions? Even when he was up and coming, we didn't see that, did we? Bob Arum made sure that that boy stayed in the United States, and when Floyd eventually became more accomplished, the less likely he was to come to the UK or anywhere else and take on a contender. Errol Spence is so confident. He's not waiting for Keith Thurman. I know he's the mandatory, but what do mandatories mean these days? There are ways to get out of it for both Brook and Spence, if the promoters wished to do so. But Errol Spence, I think, really wants this fight. And I think he believes 99%, because there's always that slight doubt in boxing, isn't there, that you might not achieve the goal, that something could go wrong. It could be an injury, it could be something to do with style-wise, the other guy has your number. But he's one of the most confident young fighters I've seen in a long time. In fact, when I look at Errol Spence, he looks a lot older than his years really are. I mean, there is one fight on Errol Spence's resume which was scary. Now, I know people are going to say Chris Algieri is no Floyd Mayweather. I know that. But this is the guy that hit the canvas, I think, 6 times v Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao's a legend. There isn't much in the game that he hasn't seen. But Chris Algieri managed to survive that fight and get to the 12th round. Ruslan Provodnikov. Now, I know Manny Pacquiao hasn't finished opponents off in years now, but Provodnikov was stopping people. Didn't stop Chris Algieri. Chris Algieri climbed up from the canvas on 2 occasions and came back to win. No such thing happened, did it, when he fought Errol Spence? If there was a destruction that you should watch, it's Errol Spence and Chris Algieri. The body work from Errol Spence was withering. The way he was... I know Algieri came to fight. That was a big mistake. Once Errol Spence backs you up against the ropes, he looks like the best young fighter where body punching is concerned in the whole of the sport. If he slows you down early and you can't move, you no longer have the lateral movement that you have at the start of a fight, I believe there is only one way it's going, and that's Errol Spence's way. Here's another thing. Floyd Mayweather said something very interesting recently in a face-off for a fight that's coming this weekend with one of his fighters, the Tank, as they call him, v Mr. Walsh. Floyd Mayweather said, Tank doesn't have this much experience, but what Frank Warren and people like that have to realise is the competition we bring into the Mayweather gym for our guys to spar with. You've got Errol Spence, Zab Judah's there on occasions. Floyd still spars at times himself. Errol Spence has been in there sparring with Floyd Mayweather. Now, I know sparring is just sparring at the end of the day. It's not the night of the fight. But by all accounts, Errol Spence gave Floyd Mayweather trouble. And for a young boy, because that's what he was at the time, to go in there against one of the most experienced defensive fighters that we've ever seen and trouble him, even in a sparring contest, tells you the level of Errol Spence. Now, reading between the lines, and I'm just guessing here as to what happened in that sparring contest, but if a man is troubling Floyd Mayweather, he's got to have done at least one of 2 things, and I think Errol Spence in these sessions, although I wasn't there, but he was doing both of them. Number 1, pressure and volume. Was Errol Spence applying that against Floyd? I believe so, maybe. Cutting off the ring. You have to be able to do that against a guy as fleet-footed as Floyd Mayweather. If rumours are coming out there that you've done well, I'm imagining you've cut that ring off on the boy. And if you haven't cut the ring off, you've hit him with some body shots that have probably slowed his movement down. So then he can't move and can't defend himself using footwork as he could on a usual given day against any other normal fighter. But because this is happening, it means that Errol Spence, in my view, is not an ordinary fighter. We heard that Joshua and Klitschko in sparring were, shall we say, life and death, really competitive. What happened on the night? Joshua Klitschko. It was competitive, life and death. Just a better version of the sparring sessions because they weren't wearing the headgear. But it was a greatly competitive match. Errol Spence has long arms as well. A back foot game. Maybe he has the ability, even against elite competition, to find them in the ring as they're backing off. But here's the thing. If you're in the pocket and you're there to be hit, that spells real trouble against Errol Spence. Now watch what Kell Brook does a lot of in his fights with, well, particularly the Sean Porter fight, which I thought was a closer fight than people give it credit for. Sean Porter likes to work, likes to throw volume, likes to make you feel like you're really close to a boiling hot radiator and you can't walk away. He puts the heat on you. The way Kell Brook was diffusing that was to hold Porter. Many people seen it as excessive, but he tied him up quite often in that fight and sort of picked Porter off with really sharp right hands, jab, over the top, things like that. But Porter was able to get in range. Brook was able to smother. That's against a smaller man. He's not as tall as Kell Brook. But look at the dimensions between Brook and Spence. That's right. Spence is the taller man. I think Spence might even have the longer reach. See, to beat Errol Spence, I think you're going to have to judge distances perfectly. Is Kell Brook capable of that? Of course he is. But not using the clinching game. I think Kell Brook, to win this fight, has to do something real different. What that is at this point, I'm of a loss to words, to be honest with you. Because, as Mike Tyson said, they all have a plan until they get hit. Kell Brook could start with a plan, get hit, and he's back to his old pattern. Kell Brook tended to go back against the ropes against Golovkin. Where was he stopped? Not centre of the ring. Where did they throw the towel in against Golovkin? Wasn't the centre of the ring. It was up against the ropes. Early on, Brook was stunned up against the ropes. The shot was a shot to the temple from Golovkin. I think it was a right hand. But Kell Brook sometimes, to me, has a tendency to corner himself. Unless you've got Floyd Mayweather's near perfection in defensive qualities, you don't want to be against the ropes against Golovkin. But Golovkin, to me, he throws a variety of punches when his man's on the ropes. But in my view, Errol Spence is obsessed with the body. I think Errol Spence is more obsessed with bodywork than Golovkin is. If Kell Brook holds on the inside against the bigger man, Errol Spence will work the body on the inside. Brook may even have to worry about the uppercut. Because we've seen it. That's what finished Klitschko. He went for the clinch against Anthony Joshua. And Joshua finally learned about what to do when a man is clinching you. Throw that uppercut, baby. And throw it hard. Land on the button. Errol Spence has got the talent to do that. and much earlier. Because I think he's got a better ring IQ than Anthony Joshua. I'd be surprised in the first 4 rounds if Kell Brook is trying to hold on the inside to not see Errol Spence working. The body, the uppercut. And if Kell Brook goes to the ropes and stays there for a prolonged period of time, he's going to receive blistering bodywork, which will stop him being mobile and will hinder his chances of using his great footwork to move around the ring. Because bodywork early puts money in the bank, and money in the bank slows fighters down as the fight wears on. Before I carry on with this tumultuous breakdown of a fight that may decide the future kings of the welterweight division, we have to realise this. Mr. Bundu went 12 rounds with the current number 1, Keith Thurman. He didn't go 12 against Errol Spence. And Errol Spence didn't finish Bundu to the body. He worked the body, he slowed the guy down, but the finishing was to the head. Head shots. Errol Spence has variety. Errol Spence, yes, he's there to be hit, but he does more hitting than getting hit. Here's another problem for Kell Brook. People talk about a fighter's punch resistance when they lose too much weight. But when you lose too much weight, you also become more vulnerable to the body. When there's less muscle on your body, because to burn weight you also burn muscle, you may lose a bit of speed as the fight goes on. I've been hearing different things coming out of the Brook camp. I seen one video where Kell Brook looked really sharp, throwing combinations, throwing that left jab and brilliant over-the-top right hand that he has, and that, shall we say, short but withering uppercut that he landed, well, a few times on Golovkin. And I don't care what anybody says, he got Golovkin's attention. Then I've been hearing on the other side that Kell Brook is looking weak. Which story am I going to believe in this instance? I think it's a mixture of both. Kell Brook was 170 plus pounds on an early weighing for the Golovkin fight. He was bigger than Gennady Golovkin. And he had to boil himself down then to middleweight to meet Golovkin. Then, stories have come out lately that Kell Brook was even heavier due to inactivity because of the injured eye socket. So he wasn't training, he wasn't sparring, he was living basically as a civilian, and as a civilian, you tend to put on a few pounds, don't you? So, he was heavier than 170 pounds. To boil down then to 147 pounds. I'm looking at both Kell Brook and Errol Spence, and I'm telling you, neither of these guys are really welterweights. The size on them. But as I said, Errol Spence is bigger than Kell Brook. When was the last time, Golovkin aside, even if you can class Golovkin as the bigger man, when was the last time Kell Brook faced a man who is bigger than him? Who hits as hard as him at least, is a better body puncher than him. As a welterweight, take Golovkin out the equation. There isn't none. So home advantage is one advantage, but the style for Brook, I think, and because of the weight, is a disadvantage. Kell Brook's hope for me is either when he lands on Errol Spence, which he will, that Errol Spence crumbles at the highest level. The other issue is this. Kell Brook has got to be competitive. If he is competitive, even if he is a few points behind in the 12th round, he can get a hometown decision. He can. Anthony Joshua. I had Anthony Joshua at least 3 rounds behind v Klitschko, come round 11. Good job in my mind that Joshua did knock him out, because that would have been a controversial decision in my view if Joshua would have taken the victory on the scorecards. I was thinking, God, Joshua needs a knockout. Good job he did get the knockout. So that tells you, home advantage. The judges do at times think your way. Sometimes it can go the other way because they're frightened of being under the microscope. But if Kell Brook is within a few rounds of Errol Spence, come the 12th round, he wins this fight based on favourable judging. That for me is his hope. And the second hope, as I've said, if Errol Spence tastes Kell Brook's power for the first time, because Brooks faced big punchers, hard Golovkin, tough, gritty Sean Porter, and he's still in the game. Errol Spence's not. If Errol Spence crumbles, if Kell Brook can get some early success, the crowd at Bramall Lane will be bouncing. Then the confidence that Errol Spence had will wilter a little. Kell Brook may gain momentum. Then if Errol Spence comes back into the fight and is able to make it a close deal, Kell Brook will get the advantage. I don't know, maybe Errol Spence might turn out to be chinny. If Kell Brook hits him with a massive right hand, sets him up, or maybe if Kell Brook even goes to the body, we don't know what Errol Spence is like taking body shots from an elite fighter. Maybe Kell Brook may fatigue Errol Spence holding him. I don't know, this is all for fight night. But I believe Errol Spence is a man that will rise to the occasion. So with that said, it is a really hard fight to call. But I'm making my prediction as this video is going on. I didn't really have a horse in the race 30 seconds ago. I've said the dangers for Kell Brook. I've said the dangers for Errol Spence. Sometimes the stupidity of youth is to your advantage because you are not worried about trying reckless things in the ring that can go your way at times, but that can also go against you. If we know Kell Brook can take a punch, he looked like he had a Shane Mosley-esque chin in the Golovkin fight. But sometimes the pain of taking a punch can prevent you from throwing, and Brook needs to throw. He needs to test Errol Spence early and get respect, because I don't believe Errol Spence has respect for Kell Brook. I think he sees Kell Brook as the stepping stone. I really do. But here we go again. It's a close one. But I have to call it. And I have to call it now. When Shane Mosley tasted the power of Manny Pacquiao and was floored, Shane Mosley again showed that great chin of his. But after he got up from the canvas, he barely threw a punch after. And Manny just hunted him around the ring for the next 8 rounds. I believe Errol Spence will catch Kell Brook. And then the memory of Gennady Golovkin will come back. I think Errol Spence has comparable power in terms of hitting to the body as Gennady Golovkin. I think he's going to make Kell Brook punch scared in this fight. And all the tools of Kell Brook will be nullified, I think, by Errol Spence's attacks. So Kell has to be strong early. He has to make Errol Spence doubt his own offense. He has to make Errol Spence think twice about using the ammunition he's got. At this point, do I think that'll happen? I don't. Every single day, I'm becoming more and more confident that Errol Spence will end this fight late and stop Kell Brook. Errol Spence, in my mind, will win, no doubt at all now. He will lose if it's close and goes to the scorecards, but it will be a 7-5 win, in my view. Everybody else will see it as Kell Brook really lost this fight, even though Kell Brook got the victory on the scorecards. Carson Jones took Kell Brook to war. And I don't think Carson Jones is in the same planet as Errol Spence, or the potential of Errol Spence to rise on this night. Golovkin did end Kell Brook in 5 rounds, despite Kell doing well in that fight. He actually lasted less time than Amir Khan did against Canelo, when all said and done. Canelo did not hit Amir Khan with as much frequency as Golovkin hit Kell Brook. He has got a better chin than Amir Khan, but thank God he did, because he'd have gone a lot earlier. Kell Brook is not a guy that will be on the back foot, fleet-footed, avoiding shots and putting up defence so much like a Mayweather or a Pernell Whitaker. Therefore, he gives you a chance to fight him. And this habit of going on the ropes, when the war starts to become a factual happening in the ring. He will hold his own, Kell Brook. He will come out looking like one of the best. But I think Errol Spence is on his way to becoming one of the best at 154. Forget the welterweights. That's not where he belongs. He'll reign at welterweight for so long, then he'll go up in weight. But I believe Errol Spence can leave the UK with the IBF title. Kell Brook, for me, would have been favourite for Amir Khan. That fight will still be great no matter what happens here. It'll be a great event, at least, Khan v Brook. But I'm edging Errol Spence at this point to take the title. Then I hope we see a Keith Thurman, Errol Spence matchup. Every single generation has a couple of really special fighters that come along. I hope I'm wrong and Kell Brook pulls off this victory. I would be delighted. I have no problem in being wrong, trust me. But two fighters of this generation that I think are truly unique, of the American variety. One, Errol Spence. The truth. I think he's going to prove to be the truth no matter what happens in England. He has a long career ahead of him. A loss doesn't even affect Errol Spence. The next guy, Terence Bud Crawford. He could come up to the welterweight division and create problems. The guy's got the class. I hated the Postel fight, but if Terence Crawford goes back to being Terence Crawford instead of stinging joints out, you've got a real special individual there and a real special fighter of multiple levels of skill. So Kell Brook, Errol Spence, I hope I'm wrong. I see Errol Spence, when he's got Brook hurt, not letting Brook get to the scorecards and breaking him down late on. Errol Spence will aim to hit the eye that Golovkin first damaged, and it will make Kell Brook weary. That's my prediction. There's nowhere else for me to go. Hope you win, Kell. My heart is with you. My head is with Errol. I just think this guy is going to go on to another level in the next few years. Because I think he's the truth. Unfortunately.